Welcome to the NZ Everyday Investor. I'm Darcy Angaro. Thanks for joining us today. I want to welcome into the studio Leighton Roberts and Sonia Williams. Leighton, for our audience, just tell us who you are. Tell us how you fit into this world of Sharesies.
Yeah, well, I'm one of the co-founders of Sharesies, one of six, and I look after the operations and opportunities functions there. So
cool, excellent. Yeah. And Sonia, how do you fit into the scheme of things here?
Yeah, cool. So once again, one of the co-founders of Sharesies, and then day to day run the product and marketing teams. Cool. So making sure we're delivering things that our customers love.
Yeah, well done. And you're doing a good job. 6 people founded Sharesies.
There's actually 7, but
7.
Six went full time. Yeah,
right.
We're about to welcome the 7th back.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
So, oh, that's cool. It's kind of like one of those stories from like the Beatles.
Yeah. Oh, he would love to hear that.
Yeah. And it must have been 13 or 14 months ago that we had Brooke Roberts on the show. One of our earlier podcasts. The room was set out differently. And it was a general overview of what Sharesies is, so I guess our listeners can go back there. But a lot of would have changed for Sharesies in just that 13 or 14 months, right? And we'll talk about that shortly. And this is coming off the back of me catching up with Invest Now, with Hatch, and with Kernel as well.
Oh, cool.
And so it's kind of like a bit of a season of digital investing platforms. And underneath that, it's just kind of just following this evolving story of how technology is reaching across into people's worlds to help deliver something that they've missed, which is financial advice. And I know it's coming from a accessibility perspective, but it's a journey, and it'll be really interesting to see where this goes. But just to start off with, and I don't know who's going to take it first, but give me some of the highlights in the last, say, 14 months or so. What are some of the things that I might have missed?
Yeah. So we've grown significantly. So now we've got around 72,000 Kiwis investing on the platform, which has
72,000.
been which is just phenomenal growth.
It's nearly 73,000 actually.
Wow.
To use that. Maybe by the end of today.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, if anyone's listening, just sign up right now just to get over that hurdle.
And as well, the amount that people have invested is obviously growing as well. So together, that group has invested over $121 million.
Wow.
And so that's made up of investments from 1 cent, which we now offer on the platform, right through to portfolios over $500,000.
If you do the maths, what's the average balance then?
I think we definitely see that climbing now, but what's the average on that?
It's a couple of $1,000s, yeah.
That's significant.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you think about KiwiSaver, right?
Yeah.
It starts off modest, and then when no one's looking, it starts to get crazy. And KiwiSaver is starting to go nuts now.
Yeah. I think for context, 14 or 15 months ago, the average trade size or average buy size was something like $20 or $30, and now I think it's up over 200.
Yeah, it's
so
200.
maybe 220 at the moment. So
yeah,
definitely people getting more confident and starting to see larger numbers coming in.
Cool. What was the conversation like that was going around that led to, hey, we should start this thing called Sharesies? What was the genesis of this whole thing?
Yeah. So I guess, so it was about October 2016, and I just started working in a bank after working in technology companies. And what I found personally was I learned so much about money from my colleagues at the bank, and working in a financial institution was really where you learn so much. But at the same time, the media was just filled with millennials not being able to buy houses because they spent all their money on smashed avocado and toast, and there was just this baby boomers versus millennials thing going on. But at the same time, working inside the bank, you could see that home loans were getting more and more expensive, and that it's not just about putting your head down, saving for a while and buying a house. It's like that could be 10 years, that could be 5 years. Those milestones were just getting further and further out of reach. And then I personally really wanted to invest and didn't know how, and started looking around and found it quite complicated. And then one night I just wanted to invest and thought, cool, imagine if I could invest $50 right now online in a really fun way. And then went to work and talked to some colleagues about it. I was working with Leighton at the time at Kiwi Bank. And one of the other co-founders, John, he connected us through Leighton's investment club. And do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, tell us about because this is what we heard about a little bit when Brooke was on the show.
I think that was just a bit of a good case study for seeing small amounts over time and them actually adding up. And I think I've always been a firm I mean, it's the common misconception actually, this whole thing, like not recognizing the small amounts adding up and the value of time in it. Like one of the first things you learn in finance class is like a sort of future value of money type formula, and the most powerful or the exponential part of that formula is the T, which stands for time. And like the club, I still do it today. It's probably 15 years, and 17 when I started, so 15 years in now. $50 a week, and so behavioural driven. Like I always prioritise that $50, even when I'd done silly things like max out my credit card up to the $500 limit. And I'm not saying that people should start not paying off bad debts and stuff like that to start investing in shares, but I think it just shows the behaviour of driving that, the peer pressure, and some way that it was fun and engaging. And I think also importantly is like almost everyone wants to be an investor, yet most people think they're not. Yet the day that I signed up to that investment club or got my friends and stuff involved, if you'd asked any of us, we would have said we were investors. So it's like, how do we create that feeling for more people? Because that's where the motivation and the confidence and stuff comes from.
Got it. So you were collaborating with these. There's this kind of perfect storm, but you took something that you were already kind of doing and you basically digitized it.
Well, I think that was just the opportunity, that, or seeing that it could add up to something, and there were people interested in it. Like everyone I ever, and it's still to this day, speak to about the investment club, it's sort of like, is it too late to join? And it's
is it too late to join, Lane?
It is too late to join. It's a bit of a, that's the thing, right? It's been 15 years. I don't know how much we've put in now, but it's probably quite a lot of money.
Is that right? So how many of you? $50 a week?
14 of us.
14 of you, and a share club for those that don't know.
For us, it's just a group of people. It's a company. It's a limited liability company, and it just invests in really whatever we want. So we literally have like a Facebook group that we vote on what we're investing in. Most things that go up there get voted yes. Like we're all pretty
bullish.
Give it a crack type people, And the idea has always been, like, I definitely I think the sort of myth that you should only invest what you can afford to lose is exactly that. It's a myth. Like even in the worst times of markets, people don't lose everything. Like very seldom. You have to get very, very unlucky and not follow some of the like your diversification rules. But with this one here, it was that was the mindset we had. We made sure that when everyone signed, you just had to commit this $50 a week. There's peer pressure to make sure you delivered that $50 a week, and you just had to basically decide that that's money that you wouldn't have in any sort of short term. So it was like a
treating as an
future
expense.
thing. And it was before Kiwi Saver and everything as well. And I mean, no one's ever missed it. It's just I mean, every now and again someone gets a week or two behind and they get given a bunch of crap from people, and then it catches up. But
having that peer pressure, having that community.
Exactly, or just the people that you could talk about money with, I think, that is one of the things that Sharesies has created as well. You'll see we've got different groups, and within the app, and people have their own share clubs, workplaces. It's really common in workplaces to have like a Sharesies club, and we love hearing those stories. But it's just where else. You sounded like a bit of a twat if you went up to someone and started talking about your investments not that long ago, because people were like, well, okay, you're trying to tell me how much money you've got, basically.
Gotcha.
Whereas now it's like, they're probably doing it through Sharesies, and we know you can do that for a cent. So even if you've got $500,000 in there, you're happy to talk about it to someone. They're not going to judge you as someone who's trying to be really...
That's right. But Sharesies is possibly one of the tools that you could employ if you did have a share club, because it's pretty low cost and it's pretty easy to do, right? Like, is that kind of how you set it up, with that sort of thing in mind? We
definitely set it up more so around providing those opportunities for everyone to get in. So I think that's the point, is once we started having these conversations, like the real driver there was that we saw this need in New Zealand to change how New Zealand is considered wealth and wealth development. And that we saw that with our friends, with our families, that this was big, this thing here that people felt like money was inaccessible, building your money was too hard, things like these stereotypes that Kiwis were bad at saving and investing. And I say that probably with Kiwis are bad at saving and investing, which was the theme of the time, or the belief that people had. And I think for us, like once we got together and started thinking about this and really painting this picture of how can we democratize this, or provide everyone with the same opportunities, whether you know someone who can start a club or not, let's just change the conversation. So if you want to, you can get in. It's one less barrier. But from that, so there was the seven of us who sat around decided to start a business together. We knew that we needed to connect with the hearts and minds of Kiwis. We needed to build a really great technical platform to scale and to be able to deal with all the transactions. And then we also needed to know about finance and leadership and culture and how to build businesses. And so from there, though, we all started doing 6 months of customer research where we just really started to understand Kiwis and their behaviours and their attitudes to money. Right. And I think that's the fascinating thing, like what Layden was saying about, how money is perceived by people, where, what we found was there was a real aspiration to be an investor. Everyone wanted to be an investor, but there was a real stigma about the types of people who invest.
Right.
So it became harder and harder for those natural conversations about money to share, and for people to share their learnings, because the flip side is when someone talks to you about that stuff, you're like, well, how do I get in? Or you're already thinking that you can't do it. Yeah. And so what Sharesies has done is really just taken that part away from the conversation and made it a bit more exciting or interesting now, because when someone tells you about their shares, it's something you can do, whether if a cent is all you can be part of the same conversation. Your returns will go up and down the same as if someone's got $100,000, $1 million invested, you've got a cent, it's the same return.
Thinking about Sharesies and thinking about this time in the market where there's been this build-up, this tension, I guess you could say, between the millennials and the boomers. Maybe we're overplaying that a little bit, but the haves and the have-not, fewer people are doing stuff, and now there's this sense of democratization on a lot of levels, and thanks to digital, accessibility is much greater now. And I know that you guys have been instrumental in changing the conversation, but to a certain extent this was going to happen anyway, wasn't it?
It's the democratization of everything. Yeah, I mean, money was, we would, for banking, the focus of this in banking while we were there was all about that. It's like they can see the change coming, it will happen to money, and I think it happened to money a little bit later because of the regulatory hurdles and the jargon. There were things that had to be broken down, and that's sort of the part that we've played. But you're right, like internationally there are places that are well ahead already, like the States, for example, but there's places still really, really behind as well, so still heaps and heaps of work. I'd say it is in its early days, but to the conversation on the sort of millennials and this baby boomers thing, it's not just a millennial problem. Like I know a lot of my family and aunties and uncles and stuff who are now investing in shares and haven't done before, haven't had the confidence to, haven't really known where to go. Like it's a really, really common, way more common than I would have expected either, because I've always been interested in it enough to go looking for it, but you really had to go looking for it.
Okay.
Unless you had huge amounts, and then and then on the like it is overcooked, that argument, big time, because I think there's lots of people feeling the same pains, particularly in an interest rate environment where you just can't get any money out of deposits and stuff, and we arguably lose some. So
the sense that maybe the ways that the parents used to build their wealth, they don't work for us. Stop teaching it to us. There's a bit of that going on.
You can, we're like, our thing was always, you can have it all. You can invest a little bit in shares, and you can also do other stuff, and let time do that thing, because that's what investing in share markets is about. It's about time.
And we think linearly. We have a problem with thinking exponentially.
We
think that if we put in our $20 a week into our whatever it is, it'll just keep on trucking upwards nicely, but in reality nothing happens for ages, and then when we're not looking, it just goes berserk completely. So it is a bit of magic.
It's interesting. So I did this math at one point on the investment club. I think it was 8.5 years of arguably just losing money. Like our accountant's fees or something was more expensive than any money we were making in that. And then to your point exactly, it was like around 8.5 or 9 years something happened, but the compounding effects just took over, and we started, now the money we get back in returns and stuff is more than what we put in. So
is that right?
It's just like the $50 a week is just like the sort of top up now of this amount that just keeps on growing on itself. So the exponential mindset is hard, but you don't see it unless you just really stick with it. That's the whole thing about it.
That's cool. So $700 a week for 15 years combined. And it's now at a point where the capital that you're introducing into it doesn't quite keep up with the return that it's building.
Not even close, I don't think. Like I don't know. Like I say, I ran I think we might have written a blog about it at some point, and I think it's in there.
Yeah.
But it was it's funny to think that now, and like you do make some quite sizable investments, but it still feels like just $50 a week that we've contributed towards. You know, it's
pretty cool.
Quite cool.
It was pretty awesome. And how does it feel being a part of something in like doing the right thing at the right time? Because you are, in a sense, you're kind of creating and writing the future in this space, like, or you're part of it anyway. And it must be quite a cool feeling knowing that you're part of history in a sense, not to go over the top with this analogy, but it must be pretty cool, right?
It's very, very rewarding to do something that you can see having an impact, and I think that's when you talk about right time and things like that. It's all to me. It's in the little moments around like the conversations you overhear. It's being in a lift and seeing someone check their Sharesies portfolio, or being in a plane and seeing through the cracks and seeing someone on their Sharesies, or like it's those moments. It's the moments where people are talking about money, and it has really changed the conversation. And I think and to be doing that in a way that is where the business benefits and the to be able to match what you're doing and having a real honest to goodness impact, like that's a really special place to put your effort towards.
You're very fortunate.
So I find that personally quite motivating, and
and so looking forward now, if we think about in New Zealand, I know that you're one of a few players, but you do things a little bit differently, and we'll circle back to that in a minute. But thinking about just the business and growth where you guys are at right now, is New Zealand it, or are you guys going to go offshore? And what would that look like?
I know New Zealand's not it, but we really want to be a big company in New Zealand, that's for sure. But we've always had aspirations to be, like, we think there's problems in lots of different places, and we're exploring a bunch of those things pretty close at the moment, and pretty excited about some of them as well. But
cool. Okay, watch this space.
Yeah, but is it a bit like that?
You almost didn't hear it here first.
Nice and cagey.
Yeah. I don't know if there's anything to be cagey about it. We've always been open that's our plan. If the opportunity's there and people want a product like ours, then why wouldn't we share that with?
And again, if anyone's listening who doesn't have the Sharesies app, then download it, have a crack at it, look at it. Like, the user experience is pretty freaking slick. It's pretty cool. And
we just won the best of the best for UX and the best design awards, which was pretty spectacular.
There you go. Congratulations.
So some external cred there. So the team does a great job.
Like going back to the business and how it actually all works, because there's a couple of unique things that I can see, and I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know everything I know about all the options out there, but what I've noticed is that owning a fraction of stuff is pretty easy to do. That's one thing. Buying shares on the NZX, that's pretty cool, and having kids accounts, I think that's pretty cool as well. So. Maybe the first thing that comes to my mind, I guess, is the NZX bit. And do you want to? Who wants to go first to talk me through that? Because that was quite a significant thing that happened this year. Yeah,
it's so for context for people who haven't followed our journey, we did start with funds on the platform.
They were managed funds to start with,
and ETFs. And ETFs, yeah.
Exchange traded funds.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
We were out there looking for what's next, and we've got a view on how investing works in the future, and one of those things is people really love choice, and a lot of people of our customers, I think 90, it was like 95 to 99% of them said they wanted New Zealand companies, and we sort of also think, well, if our whole thing has been a big company in New Zealand, or one of our things has been a big company in New Zealand, then we really need strong capital markets. And capital markets is just the existence of people being able to invest in companies, and it's a pretty broad term, but a big part of that is the New Zealand Stock Exchange.
The problem here with investing in shares on the NZX currently, or up until recently, is what?
I mean, so the similar things to what we started the business on. So people were, they were priced out. So the fees were, I think maybe the lowest was $15 for a trade up to $1,000 or something like that. That's as cheap as you could get, and that's it's reasonable, when
Per trade.
Yeah, when you've got an objective of saying you can have the same opportunity with $5, and the $15 fee sort of ruins that.
That's right. Yeah, it's like
that's
300%
It's like
of my investment.
anti-investing at that point.
yeah. So that's the first thing, and then the jargoned out. So just the way that you were engaged in it, and then left out. There was just no focus on people. People weren't really trying to get people with small balance to invest because it cost people more to serve them than what they could make. So, and that's also a fair thing, right? Like in business, but the pressure has to go on to develop solutions that where this can happen, and that's what we really took on. So, we did originally look for options to partner, but ultimately decided that we'd like to be first in line and be able to set those commercials and stuff, like the pricing, and be able to really own that and not end up having to pass through someone else's. Or
Gotcha.
And yeah, we probably spent 3 months, maybe 3 months working on that and building it. It felt like a lot longer at the time.
When you said 3 months, I was like, oh, was that all?
But I think it was about that long. And obviously we've done a bunch of exploratory work and learning along it, and then then we went and built it, and we've got an amazing team who pulled that off. So
tell me, like, if I was buying shares in A2, traditionally, I'm going to have to pay $15 per holding. I'm going to own those shares. I'll have to have a CSN, a common shareholder number, and I will be recorded on some sort of share registry as owning those shares, and dividends will get paid to me, and I'll get given letters every now and then saying, hey, come along to our annual general meeting, which I never go along to. Yeah. But that's pretty much the experience, and depending on how I bought them, I might have some sort of visibility, which I'll have to update every now and then. Yeah. But that's pretty much how it works, right? And then same process when I go to sell it, I've got to pay to sell it and all that sort of stuff. But how does, and the problems like you mentioned, how does the Sharesies way of doing this differ to that? Like, what would it mean for me to buy the same dollar amount in A2 if I wanted to invest, say, $1,000 right now?
Yeah, so $1,000 on our platform would be $5, I think, would be the fee for it. And then from there, similar things would happen, except rather than having your CSN, it's held. We actually hold with the depository of the NZX, so within the custodian of Sharesies.
And I really want you to unpackage this, because this is a big difference, right?
So New Zealand and Australia actually are quite unique in this whole CSN, and in Australia it's called a HIN number. In other countries, I mean the States, for example, it's almost impossible to hold in that sort of context. So there's the custody thing, and it's very common in New Zealand as well, and most brokers will charge you a reasonably nice fee to hold in custody. And one of the things is, like, so rather than having it in your own individual name at any times, basically it's in the name of with Sharesies Nominee Limited. And this custodian, it's extremely important part of our business because it's a separation of our own money, so Sharesies Limited money.
So not mixed with the operating expenses.
That's correct, yeah.
Like that. Okay.
And our customer funds, so they're held in separate banks, and we're audited every year. Our auditors are KPMG, and they do a report making sure that we've met the custodial assurance obligation. So that's a piece of regulation that we have to comply with as part of being a custodian. So
so my shares are held on my behalf. I'm the beneficial owner.
That's right.
But I'm not actually holding those shares. It's held on my behalf by Sharesies Nominee Limited.
That's correct. Yeah. It's firstly really important for fractionalisation. So to hold a fraction of something, you can't do that on a holding number or anything. But through that as well, we do take care of the corporate actions. So corporate actions include things like dividends, so when companies are paying out to you, or any rights offers. That's quite often companies will issue new shares, and you get that little bit of a discount. And voting is one that we're working on at the moment, and AGM attendance is now going to be available as well.
Really?
So actually,
so really, there's not going to be going forward. There's not going to be too much of any disadvantage, regardless of whether you think it's a disadvantage or not. But there's not really going to be a disadvantage using a nominee to hold.
Yeah, I mean, the CSM was the most painful thing in my life anyway. Like it always lost that.
Never mind, only because I had to keep on calling them to ask them what it is, right? It is hard.
But I mean, they've got their place as well, and actually, we will have that functionality. In the not so distant future, so we're sort of building things out.
But it is a really important thing, and I think a lot of New Zealanders possibly don't recognize the fact that even with KiwiSaver, they're not actually investing in that provider.
That's right.
They're just the fund manager, and the custodian there's somewhere behind the scenes. There's a custodian involved, and their role is really important. And like I think about this in the cryptocurrency realm as well. Like that's probably the one problem that needs to be solved there as well is the whole custodial piece, because it's a user experience problem. People aren't engaging with it because if they keep on losing their keys, they're losing their coins, and that's another episode, right? But it's an interesting parallel because this problem needs to be solved in New Zealand to increase accessibility, because you need to fractionalize, and technology is dependent on that. Right?
Yeah, and that's how it's happened in the States, really, like I say, because everything. I mean, there's two really gigantic custodial organisations in the US that are the name on the register of most of the stocks.
Is that right?
On the,
who are they? Do you know?
I can't remember the name. I can't remember the names off the top of my head, but
letters, aren't they? Letters.
They're always letters.
And there are lots of KiwiSaver's case in point. There's lots of custodial.
So you guys went through the process of creating your own.
Yeah.
Even though like it is separate from your core operation, but why did you do it one on your own rather than using the likes of say MMC or Adminis or one of the other public trusts or whatever?
We actually did go and speak with them, but and we got along really well. But what we were trying to achieve wasn't recognised as. I can't remember what the lowest fees was, but it was something like 50 cents a month per user or something like that. And
so it was that bottom end that you couldn't quite
it was
get.
just like that's too high for us. We actually there's lots of things we didn't intend to build ourselves. And we're very thankful now that we have, because it's enabled lots of other things, but we didn't actually intend to be a custodian. We didn't intend to build our own tax engines. We didn't
but you kind of had to, because if you didn't
we
solve
often
the problem,
joke about taking the hard road as usual. But it really comes down to those conversations. It's like, what are we here to achieve? And it has to work. Our proposition has to come to life. It has to be accessible, and that's the only way to do it.
Just another problem that we need to solve.
Yeah, that's right. So we end up with these people experience Sharesies as one product, right? The front of it, but in reality, sitting in behind that, there's an engine calculating its tax, which is a product. There's like the market service, which is trading on the exchange, which is a product. And then there's the custodian, which is and the registry, which is holding everything, which is a product. And then it's like
there's a lot going on. I actually read your T's and C's, which is actually pretty well written.
Nat did a great job on those.
I'll know later on. But it was actually really well written.
We just leave it there to troll people.
But I found, like, I was reading it, and the whole time I was thinking, wow, somebody's put in a lot of work here. Not just a lawyer writing that, but no, there's actually a lot of stuff that you had to do to build this thing, like a significant amount. So when you think, right, there's actually quite a few people working with you now, but I can see how they're probably quite busy because they're doing stuff.
I mean, most of our team is developers. I don't know what percentage.
I'd say most.
But they're building things, and that's it for the scalability. Like we have. We do about 15,000 trades a day, and we have one equities dealer,
right?
As an example, and then
we have a cute little bell that she rings when the market's open and when the market's closed.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
So
I've got a cute little bell as well that I keep next to my bed, but I won't tell you what that's for.
Please don't.
There it really took a turn.
No one saw that coming. The thing here is that it works, and if you want to buy shares on the NZX, then it's a valid choice now, especially if you don't really want to be fixated on what the price is. You just want to get some of it. Like if I wanted to buy some of A2 or some of Vista or whatever, it's not about, well, what's the share price? It doesn't matter, because now you're free to think, well, I have $40 in my Sharesies account at the moment because I'm putting $20 a week in or whatever that is. And it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to buy $40 worth of it. That's actually quite a freeing way of thinking about it.
Yeah. I think the key thing as well, like around like what's changed for us as a business over the last period of time as well, like it really does feel like now this is just a great way to invest. Like it's because it's built on the technology that's available now. It's the same type of investment you would get elsewhere, but you can see it all online, like the same thing that you were talking about before about how you would have to do it otherwise. It's cool to really see that grow now. Like and to be able to offer a proposition to more people.
Correct.
Like it's less just about, if you're starting out, yes, that's available, but also now you get access to the NZX for 1 cent or...
Yeah.
And so going back to my kid, because I want to talk about children and money. It's one of those things where it's a problem that I have at home. I've got a few kids, and I'm trying to teach them how money works, how to earn money, how to save money, how to give money, really important, and how to invest. And investing is a tough one. A 9-year-old is the oldest child I have, the oldest child I own. And we recently bought $37 worth of one of the funds. I can't remember for the life of me what it was, but I walked him through it. And it was actually surprisingly easy. And I think he kind of got it because some of the products that the fund owns shares in, we have around the home. And so I connect the dots, and he knows now that he owns a bit of those companies. And it was a really cool experience. And tell me about that, because I know that when I had Brooke on the show over a year ago, that was an idea, something that you guys were working on back then. Are there any unique challenges, or were there any unique challenges around getting these kids' accounts set up?
Now we've got 5,000 kids investing on Sharesies, or with an investment portfolio, which is pretty amazing. But what we learned was when you start talking to people about money, it was quick when they told us, if they were parents, that they really, really wanted to be able to pay that forward and give their kids a great start in life. And I think people care about themselves, but they care about their kids way, way more. And so this was something that really resonated, especially with our messaging about timing being so important. So parents were really coming to us saying, hey, look, I would just love a way to be able to put money away for kids. So we worked with parents to help develop a way where they could start to do that and help build a proposition that really solved that problem.
Right.
So, what were the challenges in that? The challenges probably were around the parent still being the main operator of the account. I think when you're talking to kids directly with money, you have to be very, very, very careful. And so the way that the proposition works, it is still very much targeted towards the parent or the caregiver or the well-meaning adult in that kid's life, to sit and enable a conversation rather than an app that a kid would go off and use directly themselves.
Yes.
And it's that way because at the moment we just do not have the resources to put behind really spending the effort that we need to in developing that if it was targeted to kids specifically.
Yes.
But what we're hearing as well is that conversation is really important, like what you just talked about being able to sit and talk through that and have that conversation and enable that conversation. That's stories that are being told to us all the time now, which I think makes us feel really proud of that and helping that conversation.
Yes. Tax would have been one of the problems, I guess, because some funds have worse tax treatment than others for kids. And
so we do label some of the funds or some of the investments as ones that have tax that are more, I guess, that are better for kids. But largely we're just really upfront because you might see other benefits in investing in other things. So that's definitely something to consider around age and how that impacts the tax rate.
Correct. The I still think for a lot of Kiwis, maybe Kiwi Saver is great, and especially if you can find a low cost one for kids. But investing outside of Kiwi Saver for your kids means that you at least have accessibility to it if you need to. So it's not just for their first home or for retirement.
Yeah.
So maybe those two things operate in tandem. Who knows? Everybody's different. But I think it's really important that there are tools out there to help parents to teach their kids about money, and that are soft, right? That aren't clearly, hey, this is a bank. We're trying to get into parents' lives to get to your children. It's more, what kind of tools can I have as a parent to teach my kids about money and investing? Because that's really important.
And I think that's where the do-it-yourself nature of it, I think, as well, really helps in connecting that, because it really does break it down, and it says, like, look, I'm investing in this, and you can actually do it yourself, and you can see that money grow or see it drop and then go back up again. So you start all that valuable education as well as the time in the market.
Yeah, correct. So I've got this account for my kid, and at some stage I want him to be independent and bugger off. So what happens when he gets older?
So from 16 you can have your own account. So you get to set the age that you want them to take control.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yep. And so you get to set that when you create the kids account. And I think the maximum age could be 25.
Okay.
And the youngest age is 16. So
Cool.
at that moment, they would request to take over ownership, or you could say, please take over ownership.
Yeah.
And then that would just change, and all of a sudden that he would
That's
become,
awesome.
or she would become the owner of that account, and it would become like an adult's account, much like the one that you see.
Yeah.
And then it would no longer be a kid's account in your portfolio.
Yeah, that's quite cool. It's kind of like medical insurance. When you have a kid, you get them added to your own policy. When they get old enough, they get their own. Okay, that's cool. So tell me what's coming next. What are you guys working on right now? What are you cogitating on or brewing up?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to that. Someone with $5 having the same access as someone with 500,000, and there's really a lot in there when you break it down, and it comes from things like the level of advice you get, the types of research you get about information. There's the custody piece, which we've covered, and then there's the actual transaction piece. So within all of that, there's so much opportunity for us to really help solve those problems for our investors, or provide those to our investors. I think it's really around improving the investor experience. So things like Layden mentioned around voting and being more active as a shareholder in companies. There's also things about making sure our investors have great information, and then also looking to grow the range of investments, so what our investors actually have access to.
Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you for coming in again. Well, I've never met you guys before. I've only met Brooke, but thank you, Sharesies, for allowing me to see some more team members. Before we go, if someone wanted to make their first step with investing and they wanted to use Sharesies, what's the best place for them to start?
So the best place would just be to go to sharesies.nz, and you can completely sign up online and see any information online.
Excellent. Sharesies.nz. And is it possible to set up a free account there, like a demo account, or just to open up an account without putting money in?
First month's free, and portfolios under $50 are free.
Awesome. So there you go. No excuses.
You can definitely try it out for free.
Good on you. Cool. All right. Thanks again, guys. Cheers.
Cool. Thank
you.
All right.